Welcome to your iconic image. If you want to take control of your image and be a power player in your space, then this is the show for you. Here we will arm you with tools and information to help you grow your brand on purpose. I'm your host, Marlana Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Now let's dive into today's episode. Fredrick Douglas Bussey is the owner of IconStatus. His new book, Breaking Orbit, Rip Out of the Regular by Unearthing the Power Within, explores how to discover, own, and master the unique superpower with which we were all created. Welcome, Fredrick.
How are you, Marlana? Good to see you.
You too. So first of all, explain that phrase to us, breaking orbit. What does that mean?
Well, when I came up with the idea for the book, I started thinking about how we have this idea of success, almost a visual in our heads that the higher you go, the more successful you are. But then so if you think about it in a plane, then we think about it in terms of you take off and now you're flying high, right? But often what happens is that we then get stuck in this orbit, right? Because that's really what flying is. It's orbiting the Earth at a certain altitude. But when we realize that we are really built, created for so much more than just going around in circles, even at a high level, we kind of misunderstand what it is that we're created to do. There's a phrase in the book that I coined that says that rockets belong among stars, which means that rockets are meant to go up and out and to explore the deepest reaches of the galaxy, not to orbit around the planet. Even though you're up high, a lot of people can look at you and say, oh, they're really doing really well. But if you notice that a lot of people, especially, when you're dealing with celebrities or people that are really well known, maybe even wealthy, there's this belief, there's this sense that you get that once you have reached this peak, that's all there is. And there's a kind of an emptiness and loneliness that comes with that. But when you realize that you're actually capable of so much more, and that trajectory is not meant to be up and around, but up and out, always exploring, always creating more, always seeking what is deeper, because that's what we were created to do, then it helps us to understand that what we're really meant to do, what I want to help people do with this book is to break that orbit, right? So not just go up and around, but up and out.
So how do we determine if we are basically on autopilot and just orbiting, or if we are going in the trajectory that we should?
Well, there's a sense, that a lot of us are having that we're always chasing meaning, right? Versus creating it. And, you're in a creative space as well. But even the idea of a creative space is a misnomer, that some people are creatives and some are not. If you are not in a place where you are always creating that fulfillment, creating that meaning through new things, through new endeavors, through the everyday interactions and the impact that you're designed to create, then and the impact is the ultimate way that we measure how we are moving throughout the world. And I think, it's a word that gets thrown around a lot. And I think what people really mean is that things don't feel meaningful or significant to them. They don't really know if what they're doing is moving the needle, if it's changing, right? I think we all have a sense that we're here today, gone tomorrow. But we want to be remembered. We want to have mattered. Otherwise, what are we doing this for? And so the thing that we have when we're pursuing relationships with people is that we can look in their eyes and we can see that what we are doing matters to them. We matter to someone, our words, our actions, our impact. We feel seen, we feel validated. We are seeking to find that through others because that is what we crave as human beings. And so relationships give us that. When we are in work also creates that significance. There is the ability to create something out of nothing, whether it's a photograph, whether it's a sculpture, whether it's a company, a product, whatever the case may be. When we can do those things, we create that sense of significance. However, if the things that we create feel finite, feel flimsy, feel hollow, then we feel the same way. And so while we always have this need to create something new, to create more, we need to know that the impact that we're creating is meaningful and it matters. And so I think if you don't have that sense about yourself, if you feel like you're not making headway And I don't mean just in terms of if you have a business and it's not growing monetarily in terms of revenue or size or scale. I mean that in terms of impact, you feel like you're not moving the dial, that your clients aren't being transformed by the work that you're doing together, that your products aren't essentially solving a problem that moves the world forward in a way. If you don't feel that sense of impact, then I suspect that you are probably in orbit. Even if you feel like you're doing very successful, you may be making a few $1,000,000 a year in terms of your income, but at a certain point, you can only buy so many things. You can only do so much with that money if it is not in service of creating greater impact. And I think that's what we're all pursuing on a day-to-day basis. We're all searching for that meaning and how we can create it.
So let me ask you this, because I know a lot of people that make their living in the creative space.
Mm-hmm.
Once we have created something, we're excited about it, and then we're kind of over it and on to the next thing. So how does that play into all of this?
That's a great question. I think, so there are different phases or levels of that, if you will, right? So I was a songwriter for many years. I still write songs, even as a practice of creativity. But I think that there is a sense of completion that we're seeking, right? There is an idea that we have, and our creativity is about bringing that idea into fruition. And so once it's done in sense of, I guess even in a biblical sense, right? Once you can create it and say it is good, it is complete, it is whole. It's like a connection that we make, say, I have been completed through this work. But there is more for me to do. So I liken it to the process of when I use a phrase in the book called walking in your gift, which means that I am constantly, every day, my job is to show up and to create, right? So it doesn't mean that once I have done this one thing that I'm done. It just means that every day I am seeking to create something in a complete form, to complete an idea that has impact in the world. So you can use a song as an example, right? Once you write that song and it is complete, that idea, it does the thing that it was meant to do. But there are more songs to be written because there are more truths to be told. There's more insight to be gleaned. There are more emotions to be expressed. You can, if you're in a relationship, and I believe, as a woman, as a wife or a husband, if you were to tell your spouse that you love them once, right, that would be a complete act. They would feel great. But you need to continuously do that because the relationship that you have between yourself and them, can always be expanded and can go deeper. And so it's the constant affirmation, the constant creation of more love and the deepening of that bond. And so your gift is very much like that in the way that you show up in the world. You continuously lead, show up as powerfully as you can by moving on to the next thing and creating more of these ideas, these products, more leadership, whatever the case may be, so that you can impact the world continuously. It's a journey, not just a one-time event.
So how do we get in touch with that gift? How do we know what gift is ours?
So in the book, I give 9 keys for discovering your gift. And I break them down into 3 categories. I won't go through all the steps, but essentially it is a process of self-awareness to dive in and discover what type of impact you create in the world. So the definition of a gift is your capacity to create a specific, unique impact in the world. And so if it's about impact, it's understanding, well, how do I create that impact? And those 3 categories that I use to describe that are transformers, translators, and transistors, right? And so transformers have the ability to create something out of nothing. They are what we would call innovators or maybe even creatives. They're the ones that are originals in terms of how they think, or they are able to reimagine things in particular ways, whether it's a product, fashion, art, music, engineering, ideas, whatever the case may be. Translators are people who are able to convey the meaning in something. So Again, it's about your capacity to create the impact, not about the thing that you do. It's not about occupation per se. But a translator is someone who can take the meaning that is inside of something and make it simplified, create more clarity around that. So you could think of it as if you had someone who wrote a song, you would have a critic who could review it, but maybe it was someone who wrote a book about the music itself to help people understand the real meaning behind it, to expose more insight around it. Then you have what I call transistors. These are people who essentially through their presence are able to enhance other people's gifts, to be able to bolster the power that someone else has or that other people have in an organization, in a group. You could think of it as, we call it in basketball, we call him maybe the glue guy, the guy who comes in and does all the dirty work. He doesn't get all the glory, he doesn't make the greatest shots, but he does all the little things that make things happen. And there are people that show up most powerfully in those roles. They may be the life of the party. You know, they're the ones that when they step in the room, everyone's eyes light up and they're making everyone feel at ease or empowered. But we judge our gift through the impact that we create, and knowing the particular way that you create that impact, what your capacity is to create that impact is essential to how you can show up in the world most powerfully.
So do we fall into just one category, or can we fall into certain categories based on certain situations?
Another great question. I think that essentially, you know, as I was writing the book, and I actually had this question come up in my mind, because it seems like sometimes they would overlap. I think that the power of a gift is that it can have multiple impacts, but I think essentially every one of us is a container for a type of gift. So that is the way that we show up the most powerfully. When you are a transformer and you are creating things that are original, you are enhancing other people's gifts because you're inspiring them, right? But the way that you inspire them primarily happens through creating these things in this particular way. Or if you're a translator, like for instance, I'm a translator. It's not that I have the most original thoughts, although I may, but it's my ability to be able to articulate them in a way that makes it clearer for other people, which also enhances them and allows them to be inspired or motivated or to get into action, to understand themselves better. But the way that I show up is in a particular type of container. And I think what that does is it minimizes the comparisоnism that a lot of us kind of encounter, right? So you're a creative and say in photography, if you were to compare yourself to Annie Leibovitz all the time, right? And that is your bar, but you are not understanding that you have your own particular capacity to do things in your own way, then you could potentially always be imitating her. And we say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But there is a level of imitation in terms of trying to raise your skill level, and an imitation of trying to be this person to feel validated. And recognize that we all have our own gift. We all have our own capacity in which is valid, which is necessary, which is meaningful. And if we don't lean into what we are designed to do, the way that we are designed to do it, we're not leaning into that particular impact the way that we are capable of creating it, then we're cheating ourselves and we're cheating the world. So hopefully that answers your question. I think that, yeah.
So let me ask you this then. How do we use our gift to cut through the noise or to stand out in our industry or to make a greater impact? How do we use that?
Well, one of the things that I love about this concept of giftedness is that you recognize how unique you are. Every human being, even if they were to imitate someone else, what they're doing to the letter, would still come out slightly different because we are all genetically mapped differently. We have different degrees of talents and skills and abilities. And even the length of your fingers as compared to somebody else will alter the way in which you do something, right? There's a signature, a human signature that we all have. And by striving to lean into that, we are able to show up in a way that sets us apart, because you're going to see things and filter things differently than someone else will. And we really have to learn to lean into those things and trust them, because that is how we are able to articulate our uniqueness. I love to talk about, there's a concept I've developed called singularity, which simply means the art of being singular, the art of being the one, category of one. And art is a great way to do that, because if you're imitating the Mona Lisa, like Seth Godin likes to talk about this village in China where they churn out these replicas of masterpieces of art, like the Mona Lisa, right? And so they do hundreds of them a day. They're all exactly the same. They're carbon copies, because these people's skill is replicating other people. Yet they have a skill set that if they were to be their own individual artists, to lean into that, they could be making hundreds of different unique pieces of art every single day. And what would that do to inform the world, to inspire the world, to fill it up with more beauty? Because the beautiful thing about the Mona Lisa, the reason why they're copying it is because it is a singular piece of art, right? And so if you have an artist that creates this singular piece of art, is able to stand the test of time, that is what we should be learning to do. We have been educated, however, to be replicators of the Mona Lisa, not understanding that we all are our own Da Vinci's, our own Michelangelos, our own Van Goghs. In our own way, our gifts are that capacity to show up with that artistry at that level.
I love that. So let me pull it into the music industry, because I know that you've worked in the music industry for 15 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
What makes one person stand out above another? Or is it always talent, or is it something else?
No, this is a great question. My business partner and I, High Standards, we talk about this often, right? So there's a phrase that people use in the industry just called a star, right? And what it means is that they have this unique quality that attracts people to them. I would liken a star to, if I was using categories of gifts, I would say that they're a transistor. They're simply able to embody whatever their energy is. It's a different level. And when you've been around them, and I'm sure you have, you work with different people, but there's some people that almost, they set you on edge. So I remember the stories about Michael Jackson, and how Michael would step onto the stage and he could just stand there. And he would literally start concerts where he would just stand there for minutes at a time, and people would lose their minds. Like, most artists couldn't do that. People are like, what are you doing? Like, when are you gonna start the show? Michael could stand there and you would feel completely entertained, because that was his level of energy, focus, the anticipation. He could lean into that for minutes at a time. He did that at the Super Bowl, biggest venue on stage. And he just appearing all over this stadium. However they did that was amazing. But the point is, they are uniquely themselves, and they have the confidence to be themselves, even when it makes other people uncomfortable, because that's all they know how to be. I think to a degree, we all have certain elements of that we can show up as stars in our own gift. But when it comes to the music industry, especially, you just see that talent is not enough. Like, the greatest singers are not always the biggest stars, right? Michael Jackson wasn't the greatest singer in the world. He was unique in the way that he sang and vocalized. He was a great singer, but he wasn't the greatest. But he had that ability to embody something in a particular way. And so their ability to be authentic in terms of conveying the music, you just believe them, you're entertained, you are captivated. You know, that's the level that we're searching for. And I think one of the things that's happened in this age, because of the ability of anyone now to create an album, to create a song, to produce music,
to create anything,
you know, and I can cross borders and talk about, you know, digital photography or whatever, right? Because everyone has an iPhone, they have the tools, they can imitate a great photo. But there are elements of understanding what what needs to be articulated through photo, what needs to be articulated through music or writing or whatever. There is a art and a science and an art. And there are those who have the gift to be able to do that. And it's something that you could describe, but you cannot replicate in its most authentic form, right? You can't replicate a Lady Gaga or Mary J. Blige or even a Luciano Pavarotti, right? Technically, people can know how to do certain things, but the humanity of it, the level at which it just transforms people, right? You can hear, we know on like TikTok and Instagram and things like that, we all have these duets and people are doing their cover versions of other people's songs. And so there's the cover where somebody could sing it perfectly well, but there was the original that made you love it and you felt in love with it for a particular reason. And that artist was able to convey that. And it's something that's being lost because we have so much music now and so much, so many photographs and so much data that's being put out there. Your ability to lean into your gift can be your superpower, whether in music or whatever, if you understand that no one can do it like you. And if you know what you can do, or you know the impact you can create and how you can create that, and you can lean into that, that can set you apart. And that's what the world needs. We need more one-of-ones. We need more Michael Jacksons and Lady Gagas and Marlana Semenzas and you know, Fredrick Busseys. We need more individuals because that is what makes the world what it is.
In your opinion, the people that are only striving to copy something or to recreate something that's already been done, lazy or just playing too safe?
No, it's not lazy. I mean, it can be. There's certainly, especially in the music industry, there are a lot of people that are, I would say, lazy. They're trying to take the shortcut to success. Oh, they did this, so let me do that. Some of it is flattery in that you like it so much, you just want to make your own version of it, right? But also there's a way that we are programmed to think from the time that we were born, that there is a way that you have to do things. And so people are kind of taught that success means that there is this blueprint. And there are blueprints for how you can execute the steps. But executing the steps towards success does not mean doing what someone did like they did it exactly that way, because there are variables that go into it. That's why, you know, a lot of times when I'm coaching people, I don't give them the particular steps less than I give them a framework for how to think about how to proceed and go forward, right? So you could, with your work, you could sit there and tell somebody, well, you point the camera and you make sure it's in focus and you have the lighting here and things like that. But there's all these variables that you can do, and the wizardry of it that can turn it into a story that makes it alive, that communicates something that is meaningful or dangerous or sinister or secretive or seductive. And your ability to be able to do that is based on your own particular filter, your own particular gift. And that doesn't come through playing safe. That comes through playing outside the lines. Yeah,
you know, and it's interesting that you say that too, because I have said to people in the past that I can teach you what to do, but I can't teach you how to see.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there is always that element that nobody's going to do it like you do it.
Right.
And like you said, if you lean into that and embrace that and run with that, then that's kind of where the magic starts to happen.
100%. I love that. You can't teach people how to see. And I was listening to a podcast several years ago, a young lady who is she's a scientist who studied the art, well, the science of how we see, right? And if you notice that what we think we see visually, and it's very interesting because we have been able to, again, replicate what we see, but what we see is not really a visual thing. It's not like a camera. our brains interpret the light and shadows in a particular way that creates this impression in our minds that we are seeing the physical world. And so if you are blind, you have to see with your hands. If you are deaf, maybe you see with your eyes. You're not able to use your ears, but then we see in so many different dimensions, right? We see with sound, we see with touch, we see with taste. And then these senses translate. And so being able to articulate all those different things, texture and color and volume and things of that nature, like there's all these different dimensions to our world. And to be able to convey that power and force and subtlety and softness, right, are all different dimensions of these things. And that is, to me, that again, that's the power of a gift, because it's about the details. One of the keys I talk about in discovering your gift is understanding the details that stand out to you that no one else can see, right? So when you talk about teaching people how to see, well, how do you see how you see, right? Understanding that for me, I may pay more attention to the tone of a person's voice, how they articulate a particular word, whereas someone else may focus more on the actual word itself or the shape of their lips when they're articulating that word. I don't know, but it's all in the details that you see that allow you to show up in this particular way. So you take any of those categories, you take the way that you see things, you take the things that rankle you, that get under your skin because you can't stand it. Like, I'm sure there are things that photographers do that drive you crazy, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
And those are the things that you make sure to take care about, to ensure that you're articulating your art in a very special way. And that's really important, that we understand that about ourselves, that is valuable, right? Some people will call it being a snob, but when you care about the craft that you are putting out into the world, right? Not just the work, but that it really means something to you emotionally, that you show up in this way, that when you create this idea that is articulated with a very particular sort of care and intimacy, if you will, right? So if you're looking at a jungle, it's trees and dirt, but it's also the smell, it's also the scent of it. There's a jungle is just a forest, but a jungle can be different in the Amazon versus in Africa versus in India. And so all the details are the things that kind of set it apart. Understanding where your element is and how you can show up in that element is really important.
So if people get nothing else out of this episode, what would you like them to walk away with?
So there are what I call the 3 laws of giftedness. And one of the things that is most important for people to recognize is that we all have a gift, right? So the first law simply says that every person is born and created with a special, unique, and powerful gift. You have a gift. You have to use it. It is why you're here. It is why you were created. It is what is going to fill your life with meaning and significance. The second law of giftedness says that every gift is created with a specific purpose. And you need to know that you don't have to chase purpose, that even while you're trying to live intentionally, understanding the purpose for which you created is important. So the light switch in your room, the lamp behind me, the picture frames, this chair, the zipper on my sweater, everything was created with intention and a purpose. It serves a function in this world. But human beings believe that things were created with purpose, but human beings are not. And that's a very hollow place to exist. And most of us spend most of our lives chasing or trying to create a purpose for ourselves. The zippers don't have to create purposes for themselves, and it doesn't mean that your purpose is is unimportant, even if it is narrow. Because the more narrow it is, the more clear you can be on how you show up. And all you have to do is do that thing every single day, right? So making sure that you understand that every gift is created with a purpose. And the third law of giftedness is simply that no gift can fail at the purpose for which it was created. So you look in the natural universe, and everything that was created with a specific purpose and a gift fulfills that purpose, right? So the sun always rises, wind always blows, water always flows, birds always fly, grass always grows. Everything that was created with a purpose fulfills its purpose. You have a purpose, your gift has a purpose, and you will not fail. So all that fear of failure that many of us have, even the fear of success, which is actually a fear of failure, you don't have to worry about that because you were created with the purpose and intention, and you're not going to fail at that. Birds don't fail at flying. Fish don't fail at swimming. You're not going to fail at your gift.
Beautiful. And with that, Fredrick, I just have 4 final questions for you.
Uh-oh, now, here we go.
First one, what's the best piece of advice you were ever given?
This year, a friend of mine, Nick Peterson, he talks about this concept of raising the floor, just perpetually raising the floor. And, we all get into cycles where we can sometimes do these doom loops or whatever. And so what he talks about is that what you want to do is you want to continuously be raising the bar, raising the level at which you're failing, right? So if you continually move forward, that floor gets higher and higher. So if you start out and you're out of shape, what's the bar? Well, if I can only do 1 push-up, let me do 1 push-up today, but let me raise the floor of what I can do. So tomorrow I'll do 2, and the next day I'll do 3. And so my floor gets higher, which means I get closer to the ceiling, but then eventually I can raise the ceiling on what I'm capable of because I'm continuously raising the floor. So I love that concept of just raising the floor every day.
Yeah, me too. Next one, share with us one thing on your bucket list.
So I have a list of 300 things. So Steve Harvey talks about writing a list of 300 things for your bucket list. And he warned that it would be hard, and it is hard because I'm close to 99, 100, I think now. So I'm constantly adding. You know what? Let me just, because I have it right here, I'm going to read one of them. I'll pick one from my bucket list. I'll pick the last one. Oh, I said, okay, take a ride into space. Yeah.
And that looks like it's going to be easier and easier to do as we go along here.
It is, right? So but amazingly, some people have never traveled outside the country, never traveled to other places. So, taking a ride into space will be a great conversation starter at a cocktail party, right?
Sure will. Okay, when the toy companies finally get around to making an action figure of you, what 2 accessories will it come with?
That's a great question. I would say a book. Maybe we'll call it a super book, where anything you read from this book, you can make happen. And a magic pen, because you can write the story of your life and you can make it come true.
Love it. And last thing, how do people find you?
I am everywhere on social media. You can go to my website, fredrickbussey.com. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Fredrick Bussey, Instagram of Fredrick.Bussey, Facebook, Fredrick Bussey, LinkedIn, Fredrick Douglas Bussey. I am easy to find.
Love it. And tell us real quick too about, I know you have a mastermind, and also too how people can get your book if they would like to continue reading about more of this.
Absolutely. So thank you for that. The book is on Amazon, Breaking Orbit, Rip Out of the Regular by Unearthing the Power Within. It's available there now. You can Google my name as well, Fredrick Douglas Bussey, Breaking Orbit. I have a mastermind called 7-Figure Circle, $1 Million Mastermind. There's actually a Facebook group as well. If you'd like to join that, you can click over there and apply to be admitted. It's for 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs that want to scale up their businesses to create more impact and freedom without being overwhelmed, without banging their head against the wall, without losing their relationships, that matter the most to them so they can create the impact and the things that matter most to them. It is something that's very meaningful for me, and I just love working with people and helping them to create those things that they most desire, even if they're not always sure what those things are.
And leaning into your gift.
Leaning into your gift. Yeah, absolutely. We have a process called dominance, which has had a bad connotation for years, but it simply is the first three letters DOM, which are discover, own, and master your gift.
Very interesting. I suggest everybody check it out. Everybody check the book out. And thank you so very much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Great questions.
Thank you for joining us. Once again, I'm Marlana Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Please comment, like, or share this episode, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. For more information on how I can help you create your iconic image, visit marlanasemenza.com.